Hey everybody, today I'm doing a different video, a different weekly video, and I know you guys are probably like, what is this? This isn't comic books. Well, anybody that knows me knows how much I love not only just Game of Thrones, but high fantasy. I love reading novels, especially fantasy novels, and Game of Thrones happens to be my favorite. Well, I've been anxiously waiting for House of the Dragon that premieres August 21st on HBO Max and HBO, and honestly, I just want to talk about it. So, I want to spread this YouTube channel as just the way I'm able to talk about my nerd culture and how much I feel passionate about things, this being one of them. So, today I wanted to just dive in the week before House of the Dragon premieres and kind of just give you a taste of what my videos will contain, how I got my Game of Thrones background, the Targaryen household, and what I expect to see. Now, since I have read the novels, I promise you I am not going to spoil anything. If I am, I will put a spoiler warning, but just because I've read the novels does not necessarily mean that it will come true in the show. So, starting off what my videos will contain. Every week, I'm planning to put out a video pretty much breaking down the episode of House of Dragon. Today, though, since we don't have a an episode, I wanted to just talk to you about a little bit my excitement for it. So maybe hopefully get you guys excited as well. So that's pretty much what my videos are going to contain. I will be trying to compare and contrast between the show and the book. I absolutely love doing that, and I love just talking about things. And honestly, I kind of don't want to start a podcast about this, but since I have this platform already, I figured why not start here. So yeah, a little bit about my Game of Thrones background. I have been a huge Game of Thrones fan for a very, very, very long time now. I've read all of the books, and I've seen the Game of Thrones show so many times, probably at least 15 times through. I watch them randomly. I have my favorite episodes. When I'm sick, I make sure to watch my favorite episodes, and honestly, it's just kind of my biggest delight. I share so much excitement about Game of Thrones, and it's a big thing in my family, so I have spread this amongst everyone. Even people that come to my comic shop know that I just love to talk about Game of Thrones. It is a serious passion of mine. More specifically, why I love Game of Thrones, I love how they're not scared to do big, bold things. I think that is an amazing thing. Also, I love how in-depth they go with politics and locations and just the overall lore of the world. Absolutely fantastic. Plus, my favorite character in probably all of fantasy, all of anything make-believe, is Jaime Lannister. I think Jaime Lannister is an ideal, perfect version of a character, and how he is able to grow from a character that is very unlikable to being everyone's favorite. I find him absolutely fascinating. I'm sure I'll talk about him a lot of the time because he is just one of my absolute favorites, and that's pretty much my background. So I also do a lot of article hunting, and I read a lot of Reddit posts. I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I kind of just know a lot about Game of Thrones. A lot of people could ask me a question, and I probably know the answer. So I am your go-to, trust me on this. So, House of the Dragon, like I said, is going to be a brand new show on HBO Max. It is a prequel of Game of Thrones. Now, this prequel is going to be set about 150 to maybe 200 years before Game of Thrones. So, think about generations of generations. So your favorite characters in Game of Thrones, although they won't necessarily be a part of this show, their households and their ancestors definitely will be. So you'll be able to compare and contrast how your favorite characters were like back in their past ancestry. And I find that really interesting. I want to see especially how the Targaryens got this famous, Mad King, Mad Queen prophecy to them. Now, to start off with the Targaryen household, which is what this show is mainly going to be about, I'm going to just digest a couple of history lessons of the Targaryens so that we can meet up to the current age. Now, this show is based off of George R.R. Martin's book called Fire and Blood. Fire and Blood is read like a history book. It is not read like the other Game of Thrones novels where they are in points of view of characters and you have like specific dialogue and things. This one you're going to have to kind of put the pieces together. You will have an event, a way that somebody has seen it and put it in this history book, but that not necessarily means that is the way it happened. So we kind of have to take pieces of this history book and digest it and see and merge and kind of create our own version of it. And that I find incredibly unique about this show, and that's what makes it very different from Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones had a very strict storyline until, of course, they didn't, and a lot of people feel like that's when it fell off. But this one in particular, you're not going to have a very strict version of things. You're going to have wide ranges and people's versions really expanding on that history lesson. So I'm really excited to see all of this. Now, to talk about the Targaryen household, I do have to start with a person that's probably not going to be in this series called Aegon the Conqueror. He is the very first Targaryen to start this whole lineage of being the king of the Seven Kingdoms. He ends up being able to take over the Seven Kingdoms, specifically with his two sisters, slash wives, and him and her dragons. They kind of take over by brutal force, and that's how this all starts. Now, this takes place about 150 years after Aegon the Conqueror has taken place. We are going to have very key Targaryens and key dragons that are in the series. Now, I don't want to spoil the dragons because I'm really hoping the dragons have all unique personalities and have like really great introductions, and I want you guys to learn about them by yourselves. However, I do want to talk about the characters that will be in this show. So, starting off, King Jahirus the First. He's going to be the old king. He is probably going to be the first king that we see, and he is actually the fourth king to take over after Aegon. So he is gonna start. He has so many children. However, only two of them last after he has reigned, and at that point they have decided that it's either gonna be between Princess Rhaenys, who is the queen that never was, or King Viserys the First. So he's not king yet, but he will become king. The more logical reason would have been Princess Rhaenys, the queen who never was. She was definitely the more political invested. She saw a lot of the meetings. She knew how to rule this kingdom. However, she was a woman, and women back then were not allowed to lead. They were only allowed to help their men. And so, of course, she was out the question, and they put Viserys on the throne instead. And that's how our story really starts to pick up. Now, Viserys, although he is a good king, he is a young king, and he has so much to learn. He's also incredibly laid back and nonchalant about things, so it takes him a while, but when he starts to get up in age, he really realizes, like, I don't have a male heir. What am I going to do? Because honestly, when I die, I don't know who will take over. So in his head, there's only two real options, and it is between Daemon Targaryen, who is his brother, played by Matt Smith, and Princess Rhaenyra, my bad. So many R's, so many V's, it's gonna get a little confusing. Rhaenyra, my bad. Rhaenyra is the one that never was, but Princess Rhaenyra she's young, she's delightful, the realm sees her as this very pleasant exterior, and Daemon Targaryen, he's a a hothead. He kind of wants power. He kind of like loathes a lot of people. He starts fights, and he's much more of a aggressor of a sorts. Whereas Rhaenyra, she has just been this pleasant princess, ideal to the throne. So Viserys has a really hard question right now. Does he allow his brother to rule just because he's a man, or does he fight for his daughter to become the first queen and really try to push her essence on this? And that's really where we dive into our storyline and the really big battle between it. We're going to be introduced to other houses as well, such as Hightowers and Valerians and all kinds of Baratheons. However, I really wanted to focus on the Targaryens today and really get to know them. So they will be the main factor of the show. So probably as the episodes go on, I will be talking more and more about other characters. But that is going to be the main basics of this. A couple key locations to remember as well. We're probably going to spend a good portion of the time in King's Landing, which is the capital of Westeros. The capital of Westeros contains subsections such as the Red Keep, which is the castle which a lot of people recognize from Game of Thrones, but there's also Flea Bottom, which is kind of like where the peasants hang out. That's where the poor people will live. And that's going to take an interesting effect into this as well. Places like Scepter Baylor that Cersei blew up, that probably won't be in this show because it didn't exist yet. And it's going to have so many cool imageries, such as a place called Harrenhal. Harrenhal was in Game of Thrones, where Arya was Tywin's cupbearer, as well as where she met Jack and Hagar. And Harrenhal was known for being an incredibly haunted, dark, desolate, almost dead place. And it's mainly because the dragons ruined and melted that place during war, and so we're gonna probably see that not so desolated in this. We actually might have an incredibly important scene in there as well, which I'm really looking forward to. Again, don't want to spoil anything. And then another big place will probably be off of River Run as well as Dragonstone. Dragonstone is essentially the place where the Targaryens lived when they weren't in control. So if there was going to be a new family member essentially take over the king, they would end up living in Dragonstone usually. And that is where you see that big table of Westeros and the key players of it. We're going to see a new imagery of that as well. And it just looks so cool. I'm really excited for it. And it should be absolutely wonderful to see this all in that time. So what do I expect to see from the House of Dragon? I expect to see the normal Game of Thrones treatment. Not only do I want it to be visually appealing and absolutely gorgeous CGI, I expect there to be amazing fantasy whimsical music, as well as incredible opening, because I mean the opening to Game of Thrones is some of my favorite openings of all time. I think they're amazing. I love the different imageries throughout the seasons as well, when you see it either expanding in new towns or collapsing, being on fire. Any of that, I want to see that in this. I think that would be a really cool thing, and I expect to see some really amazing battles. I mean, Game of Thrones is known for doing their battle sequences. They're known for having giant extravagant episodes for costing millions of dollars, and yeah, I'm just really stoked to see all of this. So if you're really stoked to see House of the Dragon just as much as I am, I expect you guys to be here every week after each episode to talk about it and break it down, because honestly, it's just going to be so much fun for me. I think this is going to be some of my favorites. Although I love talking about comics, Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon is another really big inspiration for me and another really big part of me. So to be able to talk about that on here will be so fun. So I hope you guys will stick around, and I hope to see you back next week. Have a great day.